Batra Daf Memtet, continuing from Amud Bet, a few lines from the top, well, halfway down. The Gemara said earlier that a husband cannot, in the Mishnah, that a husband cannot establish Hazakah on his wife's property. Now, the Gemara has no problem with that because it sounds like Hara Ayayesh, that if he brings a proof, a document, it says, I don't have Hazakah, I bought it from her, for example, then it's a good kinyan. Now, the Gemara says, what's the problem with that? How come she can't argue like we see elsewhere that a woman can claim sometimes that she didn't want to go against her husband's wishes and therefore just said yes to the sale just to get by, but really the sale should not be binding. Right? So she said, I just did it just to please him, but I didn't want to sell it. Mishnah says the same thing. Someone bought a property from the husband, and then he made sure to buy the wife's portion from her as well. It's not a good purchase. We see from here that a woman can claim the only reason why I sold it was to appease my husband, and it's not a good kinyan. Over here as well, maybe we should say that she just did it just to make him happy, and the kinyan shouldn't go through. Or it says had we said over there it's different. The only three scenarios that a woman does not approve of a sale, even if she's approved, is one is the land which is specified her in her ketubah. The husband designated field A. That field, even if she agrees to sell it while they're married, not a good sale. She's just playing nice, but does not want it to get sold. The second type of scenario, he told her orally in front of witnesses that designating field B for her ketubah. So the first two cases are ketubot related fields, and the third one is the third one is that she brought with herself into marriage. It's her own property that she brought in. In that case, in that case, that type of field C, for example, she brought that into the marriage. Yes, the husband has access to it because they evaluated it from before, but technically, if they get divorced, it goes back to her. So therefore, if the husband wants her to sell it, she can say yes to please him, but really she doesn't want to sell it. Now the guy said, so if that's the case, then what case is Rabba Rav Huna is excluding? Meaning only those three cases are void. But what about other cases that it would be a good sale? Is referring to other properties owned by the husband. If so, what do you want her to do? You want her to, let's say you have field 5, not a field in the ketubah, not a field in that she brought previously. If she were to agree, it's a good sale. But now, would she veto it without causing problems? Because what happens if, let's say, she says, "I don't want you to sell it"? What's he going to say? He's going to say, "Are you planning on getting divorced? Are you planning on my death?" And therefore, if she refuses to sell it, it looks like she has her eye on it, and that will cause problems. So it also should be a batel sale. How can it be a good sale if she's stuck between a rock and a hard place? Maybe it's referring to milog property. Milog property is the property that she brings into the marriage, or the husband is able to use the produce. He can sell it, but then it goes back to her. Oh, bomb question. So now, why would Mechsei Maluk be a good sale? Because technically, if she wants to refuse, there's not going to be any anger on the husband's part because he understands. Right? It's not like the other field 5, where the husband's like, "Why are you looking at those properties?" Over here, it's her field. So if she were to veto it, it's a good veto because the husband understands it's her field. But therefore, if she doesn't veto it, it should be a good sale. That's what the Gemara is saying tonight. But the problem is, Amimar just said that if a husband and a wife sold the milog property, lo asu below klum, it's not a good sale. So we see that minechse milog, a milog property that's sold, is not a good sale. Gemara says, when do we say Amimar says that it's not a good sale? The husband sold his rights to the milog property, then he died. The wife can then take it away from the guy who bought it, or vice versa. She sold the land, and then she died. Ataihu umapik, the husband can take it away from whoever she sold to. But Takanat Rabbanan, that because this power was given to him by Chachamim Takana. They made this takana and usha. Aisha shemachar b'nei milog, a woman who sold the milog property while the husband was alive. Umeta, then she died. Then the husband can extract it from the purchaser. But if they both sold it, or if she sold to him, it's a good sale, like we said. Now we're going to give a different. I mean, I said before that you can't sell milog. So we gave one explanation why you can't sell it. Then we said how you could sell it, and now we're going to give another explanation why you can't sell it. The Tanrata says, someone sold a slave, Upasaki Moni made a condition, I sold my field to Reuven sold his Eved, his slave, to Shimon. But he says the first 30 days after the sale, he's still working for me. I need him to, let's say, train my second slave. Reb Meir says, Harishon, the original owner, Yeshno Bedin Yom Oiman. He has the din of the 24 hours. Pasuk says, what says 24 hours? The Pasuk says that when a person has an Eved Kanani, in general, if you kill an Eved Kanani, you're Chayav Mitah. If it's your Eved Kanani, yani if it's your slave, if you attack him and he dies after 24 hours, even if it's because of your hit, you're patur. Because in general, if someone hits someone and he dies a week later because of the hit, you're chayav mitah, even the same way you would die immediately. The hidush over here, by that if it's your eved and he dies after 24 hours, you're patur. So now in this scenario where the guy's still working for Reuven for 30 days, even though he already sold him to Shimon, Reb Meir holds that the first owner has the din of 24 hours, and therefore, if the second guy, the Shimon, the purchaser, kills him even after 24 hours, why? Because he's under his authority. Reuven he's still working for Reuven. And the second master, like we just said, the buyer, is not under the din of 24 hours, and therefore if he dies even after 24 hours, Kasavar Meir holds, why does he hold that? When you have access to the produce, when you're in charge of the produce, which means if you have access to the rights, then that's as if you own it. And therefore, the first owner, even though he technically sold them, since he has access, he's still considered the owner. He has that leniency of the 24-hour timer, but the second one doesn't. The Rebbe says, Hashini, the second owner, Yeshno Bedino B'Maim, he has the 24-hour leniency because he owns him. And Harishon, the first one, Eno Bedino B'Maim, the guy and the first owner, even though he's working by him, doesn't have it because he doesn't own it. Simple enough. And why does that work? Because just because you have access to it, just because Reuben has access to the work of the Eved, that does not make him his. He belongs to Shimon, and therefore Shimon has the leniency of 24 hours. Rabbi Yossi said a different way. They both have this leniency of 24 hours that if he dies after 24 hours, they're patur. Zeb ben Bnei Shodav, the first one because he's working for him. Zeb ben Bnei Shodav, the second owner because he belongs to him. The reason is because he doesn't know, he is a safek whether or not ownership and access to the rights of the produce, or over here to the slave, is considered ownership or not. And therefore, because you have a safek in the Pashut Akil, in case of capital punishment, you're lenient, and therefore they're lenient to the first and second owner. Now the reverse, the Bezer says, both of them don't have it. Both the Machiav Mita, Reuven or Shimon, first master, second master, are both Chayav even after 24 hours. Why? Because the first one is because the purchaser, the second one because he doesn't have him right now, he's not under his authority. The first one because it's not his property. He doesn't own him anymore. Why does the Rebbe hold that? Amar Pasuk says, "Lo yukam ki kaspohu." The reason why you're patur is because it's his money. And over here in our case, kaspo hamyuhadlo, it has to be talking about a case where it's only yours. In our case, the slave doesn't belong to Reuven because he sold him. He doesn't belong to Shimon because he's not working for him, and therefore he would hold that both masters are chayav even after 24 hours. Neither of them get the leniency. And we see from here that the other would hold that the case of the milog properties, why you brought it all down, is will be pasul because neither the husband or the wife hold full ownership of it because they both have access to it, and therefore none of them can sell it. That's why the Ibat Ima answer we said earlier in Amud Aleph was that that none of them have access to it, and therefore you can't sell it because it's like kind of like a partnership. I can't sell the whole thing because I don't have full access to it. We'll stop here.